Okay, so this interview is with a longtime friend of mine who has been, as we say in the interview, has been pretty up close to this experience that I've been having over the last few years. Dr. Corey Emanuel, I think of him as a troublemaker, and you'll be seeing him more on the show here, but I'm really excited for him to be able to ask me some questions that you all have been asking, and Loki, the producers, to kind of get into where I've been over the last 2 years and how things have changed for me, how I'm thinking about things differently, how I'm feeling differently, and how I'm approaching the world a little bit differently. So, this is my conversation with Dr. Corey Emanuel, media psychologist, who is asking me way more things in my business than he probably should be. But enjoy.
For
To kind of get
people
into,
tuning in, Jarrett and I have a friendship that spans 15 years. So I know this man very well, but these questions that I'm asking, I don't know all the answers to. So I'm going to be learning with you all. And I want to start with your own words. So just a couple of days ago, Jarrett, you put out a post across social media and you said, "This is my second Easter not being Christian anymore. I turned 40 in divinity school when I walked away from the church. It's been the best, most challenging, disorienting, liberating, enlightening, control alt delete thing I've probably ever done. It's such a range of feelings. It has to be grief. I've always had God, though I've left one church or another many times in my adult life. Leaving Christianity has been another something I'm still trying to figure out how to discuss or write about." So, having been out of divinity school now for about a year, why was this message important for you to put out right now?
um, uh, to be honest, you were part of that. We're in a group chat with some other friends, and it was the one of the first like Easter references that I had on Easter Sunday was you two at church, and it was at the Easter service, and it was like, oh yes, here we are, Easter is going, and like on Instagram, I'm scrolling, and all the notes are Happy Easter. He got up, like Resurrection Sunday, like all of those things. And I'm in community with a lot of people who are Christian. I've been Christian for 40 years, and so I left Christianity last year while I was in divinity school, or in 2025 while I was in divinity school. And it's been a challenge. I even got the language of grief from you and being like, I'm feeling like sadness, I'm feeling frustration, I'm feeling denial, I'm feeling like so many different things. And I've been trying to figure out how to talk about that. And I feel like I've been putting out little bits of it. And I think if anyone that's been following me closely will see that I'm not say I don't talk about God and things in the same way that I used to, or church more specifically. And so I felt like this was a good day to just finally say something. I hadn't even really planned it for being right before the show came out. But more so on Sunday, it was like, oh no, this is the moment to like just say this and like see what comes back. And I've gotten quite a bit back. So
Love that. Now,
yeah.
can you take us back to that moment where you decided divinity school is for me? Like this is the chapter in my life where insert divinity school.
Um, I had started thinking about getting some kind of religious education and wanting to like really answer the questions that I had about God and queerness and the things that I thought I had gotten over, but had been to like plenty of queer churches and queer ministers and queer folks within faith communities that were like, God loves you as you are, and no matter what they say. And like, I just hadn't ever gotten an answer or feedback or seen something that was resonant enough for me to stop asking the question. And so I had started thinking about getting a religious education. I had a friend over for dinner, Philip Picardi, who's been a big part of this journey happening. And we were discussing at dinner. He had gone to Harvard Divinity School and was a part of their MRPL program. And he was like, I think you should do that. I think it would be really, really great for you. And like, I'm a college dropout. I dropped out of college and have always kind of had that hanging over me. So going to A master's program wasn't something I was ever even really thinking about a whole lot, and certainly not going to Harvard. But that kind of planted the seed, and I started the journey of like meeting folks who have been in the program and talking with people about the way that that experience had been, and really feeling like it was something that I wanted to do. And there were various moments throughout that year leading up to it that really helped me to see like what I could do, what I could get out of it, and it still ended up being a very different experience than I was expecting.
Yeah, so that's the perfect pivot to this next question. So you went into divinity school as a Christian, and since having graduated, you've made this bold statement that I used to be a Christian. What about your divinity school experience informed this new declaration?
Hmm. Um, Many things. There were various different pieces of it. I think the first um, piece of it has been the church. Throughout most of my life, I've been in church, around church folks, and attending one church or another, and oftentimes have been in a church and been dissatisfied with what I was getting, or frustrated by it, confused by it, dealt with different pastors, and most recently have been at the Potter's House. And I was not getting what I needed anymore. And I also felt like I was tired of the way that there was a decided ignoring of queerness, of queer people, of anything that was not a heteronormative um, relationship. And it frustrated me because I knew it didn't have to be that way. And that wasn't just at the Potter's House, but at various different churches. I'm like, if they're not like overtly homophobic, it is covertly homophobic in the ways that we don't speak about this group. We don't serve this community. We don't use these examples. We don't do any of that. Um, and I think when I got to divinity school, I came in with this view of wanting to study the ways in which Black, queer, and trans people have shown up in what we call the Black church tradition. Because we use the phrase the Black church, but there is not a Black church, right? There's a Black church tradition, but we don't have like an overseeing body in the same way that the Catholic Church does or the Episcopal Church. So when I say the Black church tradition, I mean the kinds of church that we've grown up in that aren't all necessarily having the same theology, but look similar and have similar traits. Um, when I got to divinity school, for me, it started to really shift from me wanting to make this big shift in the Black church to wanting to serve the people that I was concerned about. I wasn't interested in getting them to see me as human anymore. I was interested in serving the people who have been through this experience that I've been through in various different kinds of ways. And to do that, I started to see like I need to serve myself first. I need to be able to get my questions answered. I need to be able to feel more confident about my relationship with God. Um, and that started to really shift things for me. And when I saw that going to church was not something that was even necessary to have a relationship with God in the way that I thought, um, and that I didn't have to continue to have this frustrated feeling with going to church or being a Christian more broadly, because I didn't agree with. I've seen so many different interpretations of biblical text of what Jesus was and wasn't, what he looked like, what he didn't look like, and started to see like we don't know any of these things, but we work with this certainty that really, really frustrates me, because certainty is something that we perform. Right, we perform that we know God did this, we know God said that, the Bible says this in the book, but then like when we ask a follow-up question, we're like, how do we know that? Oh, well, because the Bible says it. But the Bible, if we translate it back to what it said the first time, it didn't say what you said. So what do you mean? There's so many of those different kinds of things that have been difficult for me that I'm like, I actually don't need to be involved here in this way anymore. And I need to find something different for myself.
Mm. Now, you've touched on three things already that I think a lot of our listeners would be interested in hearing more about. So, you are someone who's been part of the Black church for 40 years, right? You've identified as queer for almost half of that, right? 20 years. And now you have this year of divinity school under your belt. For pastors, folks listening right now that might be interested to hear, like, what would church need to look like for someone like yourself to not sort of denounce Christianity anymore? Like, what would the church have to look like in order for you to not identify as I used to be a Christian? Is there something that the church could do?
Yeah, the idea of the church being irredeemable feels like an oxymoron for me. I don't know, to be honest. I have spent so many years like having friends in church and around church, suggesting I be a pastor or preacher. When I went into divinity school, many of my friends have been, "Hey bishop, hey pastor, hey whatever," and I'm like, "No, no, 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 right? That's not what this is." I think a big part of why going back to church would be difficult for me is because I don't believe the same thing that I believed before. I believe in God. I don't believe that Christianity is the only way that I can have a relationship with God. I don't think that God is a judgmental authoritarian who is sitting up high and looking down low and having something to say about every single thing that I do, through the lens of our culture, right? Like, one of the things that I've been trying to talk about more is the um, one of the big things that I learned in school, or that like really came to me in my study, was like sin is a construct of power, right? Sin is a construct of a power system. It is not inherent, it is not self evident. Like, God didn't come up with sin, religion came up with sin, right? And so when we think about being queer people and that being sinful in many people's eyes, I'm like, oh, this is all a choice, right? This is all a decision that churches get to make, whether or not they ascribe to it or not, et cetera. Um, but there's so many different things that I'm really, really frustrated by within Christianity that I don't know that I see a path back for me to church. Um, not this version of me, not like this today version of me.
Sure, sure. I'm also curious because I think folks would be interested in learning, like, what was it about maybe some of your curriculum, some of your courses that would inform now how you think about religion and church? Like, what was there a particular course? I know you've shared with me there was one particular course where you had to do a couple of mini sermons. So, like, kind of talk us through what some of the coursework has looked like for you to arrive at this particular juncture.
Yeah. So the class that I was in when I had the sin as a construct of power kind of light bulb go on, where I said to myself, this feels obvious and revelatory, was a class called Sin, Sex, and Race that analyzed the juxtaposition of those things, taught by Dr. Wendy Millett. And I got that from reading all of these different big thinkers' thoughts on sin and what sin is and what it isn't and how it works and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, these people are all saying different things, right? Which helped me, to connect that to the way that I think about law. Law is not representative of what is right or wrong. The law is representative of who is in power. And I think we can see that more and more with this administration that we have now. And so that was one of the courses that really helped me to think about the ways that blackness has been criminalized, sex has been criminalized, gender has been criminalized within, religious structure. And that really shifted something for me. I took two classes with Reverend Dr. Kelly Brown Douglas, who's one of my favorite people. Dr. Wendy Millett is fantastic as well. Reverend Dr. Kelly Brown Douglas taught two classes that I took called, I took Exploring the Moral Imaginary in Black Women's Fictional Literature. And I also took a womanist theology class. And what was interesting to me with Exploring the Moral Imaginary, we discuss the moral imagination is, the way I define it or explain it, is kind of the constellation of things that make up the way we see morality. And that can be our religion, it could be our family, it could be the movies we grew up watching, it could be the neighborhood we grew up in, the thing that someone said to us at school, etc. Um, and when we think about and how we take all those things to think about what is good, what is bad, what is right, what is wrong, that class helped me to be thinking about the ways in which Black women throughout American history have been writing about what um, what is good, what is right, what is righteous, what is God, etc. And help me to be able to see the ways that our power structures make decisions about that, right? Through religion, a lot of the different ways. Womanist theology really opened me up to being able to see the ways in which a black woman, if you're not familiar with womanism, they say that womanism is to feminism as purple is to lavender. That womanism is a deeper version that really is a lot more inclusive in the ways that feminism doesn't really address Black women and a lot of other groups, queer folks and things like that, queer and trans folks. Um, that class helped me to be able to see like, oh, we can orient our theology in the way that we choose. I can come in with a humanist theology. I can come in with a womanist theology. I can come in with a myriad of different ways to see this. And like theology is, and I really appreciate Kelly Brown Douglas saying this in our first class. Like theology is faith seeking understanding. Faith seeking understanding, not getting understanding, not having understanding, not professing understanding, not the certainty that we profess, but like faith seeking understanding, continuing to seek, to ask those questions. That's even biblical if you think about seek ye first, like continue to seek. So I various different classes that I took had a lot of informing on this. I did take a class that required me to preach, which was very weird and uncomfortable, but also incredibly dynamic and energizing in a way that I appreciated. I think getting up and being able to use the gifts and skills and talents that I have um, to either preach a sermon about something religious or to preach an idea was really cool.
Beautiful. I love that. Now, kind of segueing off of this, I know you had designated coursework that led to your terminal degree, but also what a lot of folks may not know about you is that outside of your work as a journalist, you are an artist, you're a creative. And so you found your way through divinity school through painting a lot. And so I want to talk a little bit about the sense making that you were doing through painting while you were in divinity school, and what did the painting sort of help you with in terms of sense making?
Mm. Um, I did not know we had an art school at Harvard. I was only going to be there for 1 year. I came in like really focused to try and knock out the things that I came there for, to not be overwhelmed. And on my way home from class every day, I would walk past the Harvard Art Museums and kept intending to go see it. And went the whole first semester without doing that. Over the course of the break, the holiday break, I stayed in Boston. And one Sunday, after church, actually after streaming church, I told myself I wanted to go and see the Harvard Art Museums. I walked over there and walked into what I thought was the Harvard Art Museums, and was like in a place that I knew wasn't the Harvard Art Museums, and discovered pretty quickly that I was in the art school. And the security guard said I could walk through the building, and I did. And I was looking in these art studios, like looking in the windows of these places. Um, we're both around the same age. If you grew up on the right coast, you might remember Mervin's commercials where the woman's like open, open, open through the windows, trying to get into the doorbuster sales. That's how I felt wanting to get into the art studio. I was like, they were locked because it was holiday break, but I was like, I want to get in here. And I could feel something like tingling in my body, in my chest. And I would go upstairs to another studio and look in, and I could feel it. And it was strong enough that I could not ignore it. It was something that was loud enough and physical enough in my experience in my body that I was like, I want to feel this feeling more. So if I need to switch my schedule around to come take classes to be in this space, I will. And that's what I did. Like that day I went home and completely researched like what classes would have me in studio making. And that really started to shift something for me after I had already had the sin is a contract of power, and I think I'm going to leave church, and I don't want to focus on changing the church. I want to focus on serving these people. I had already had those shifts in the first semester, and then to have the feeling of like, oh, I want to take care of myself, I was like, oh, this little boy that I've been asking questions about, that was me as a kid that I saw this photo of. I was like, oh, I think this is lighting up that same thing that lit up the little version of me as a kid when I was painting and drawing and doing all kinds of different things. And so being in an abstraction class and painting, 2 days a week and having 6 hours of studio time outside of class, et cetera, it painting and drawing and doing sculpture really started to just show me different principles of different things that have been useful for me in many different kinds of ways that I didn't even really have an immediate connection to with like divinity or religion or spirituality, that has kind of grown and developed after that.
Mm. So it sounds as though painting might be spiritual for you, but I'm also curious, now no longer being a Christian, what does your spiritual practice look like now?
I've uh, I think of the creativity as a spiritual gift. I don't have it really fully as like a part of spiritual practice for me yet. I will say that like many times I've been like on FaceTime or something with friends while I'm painting or drawing, and like unprompted, multiple friends have said to me like, "Oh, you see, you are different when you're doing that." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And they're like, "Oh, like you seem more meditative, you seem more calm, your voice seems different, and you're kind of like in a different thing, and you're here in a different kind of way," which is how someone said to me that I should do a paint and sip. Like, you should do like something where you get to go up and talk and like help do this with a group of people. And we eventually did that just here recently with Say Less in Inglewood. And so, like, it is something that I can tell is doing something in me. And abstraction has been uniquely interesting to me as opposed to more representative art, because abstraction always shows me something. Abstraction, when I don't go in with like a big intention of what I want it to be or what I'm expecting out of this painting, sometimes I go in, I want to make this thing and I'll do that. And sometimes I like this color and I want to see what it's going to do on the page. And oh, I'll keep doing that and I'll keep doing that and I'll keep doing that. And I'll add another color and oh wow, I see something coming. Um, and there is something about that I don't think I've expressed to myself as being spiritual, but that feels similar in that kind of way that I'm still kind of discovering, unpacking, figuring out. I don't know if that answers your question at all.
It does, and it
Okay.
I think it makes sense that you're still figuring it out. It's still evolving, and I love that. I think that there is often this perception that if you denounce Christianity, you denounce your religion, then that means that you are separated from God, or perhaps you don't have a relationship with God. Can you speak to, now no longer being a Christian, where God falls into your life, if at all?
As soon as you said that, I immediately heard, "You don't love God?" Like that's
Fair.
it's difficult to not be Christian anymore, but to still be so churchy. Like it's a very weird dynamic. Um, what is the question? I'm sorry. Do I still love God or do I still?
Like, do you have a relationship with God when you no longer identify as a Christian? If so, what does that look
Yeah,
like? Yeah.
yeah. Yes, I do have a relationship with God, the divine. I think what is different now is how I think about who and what God is and how to connect with God. Um, I think it is. You asked about spiritual practice, and like I am rebuilding my spiritual practice right now. And like a couple of weeks ago, I was thinking like, oh, maybe I should do something on Sundays when I'm not at church, right? And I've because Sunday is the moment that I feel it the most, Sunday mornings. Um, and so I've been trying to figure out my spiritual practice, but I think right now spiritual practice looks like interrogation, asking questions of myself. I This shows up so much in ways that I wouldn't have really expected or been able to, kind of name until they were happening. But it comes up in conversation when, a friend of mine is like, well, favor ain't fair. And I'm like, I don't think I believe in that anymore, right? And now I'm interrogating what I believe about favor, and I was discussing it in divinity school and things like that, and I'm like, okay, well, if I don't believe that about God anymore, and to be clear, what I'm saying is like, I don't believe in favor because it doesn't make sense to me. Favor, the idea that God has a favorite is really fun and cute, and we all want to be God's favorite. But also, like, so God just likes me more than like the children in Palestine or the homeless person on Skid Row, or I'm more blessed because I have a roof over my head, or those things don't make sense to me. And I don't know that I would want to worship or serve a God that did think that way. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. And so it comes up all the time, and I'm figuring out like, what do I do with that, and how do I practice that, or how does that show up in my life, or what have you. So spiritual practice is something that I'm still like shaping and molding, and may be for who knows how long.
Mm. Do you think more people need to release themselves from a religion?
The short answer is probably.
Mm.
One of the reasons that I'm not Christian anymore is because I always had a really difficult time with the requirement of evangelism and getting people to convert so that they can see like you see and join the church that you're at and do what you do and think like you think. Um, Over the years, that has started to feel a lot more like uh, church capitalism, or as our troublemaker, Carbon Michael Smith, will call it the ecclesial industrial complex. The idea that we measure the church's success or a pastor's success based on how many people are coming in, or how much money they make, or how big the offering was, or how many services they have, or how many campuses they have, or how big the YouTube channel is, or how many followers they have, etc. I don't think so many things about church feel like God, essentially. And when I'm looking at religion, I don't see it as useful for me to connect to God because I don't believe a lot of the things that I'm being told anymore. And so I think for people who are struggling with religion or not feeling like it is working for them anymore, or that they're not connecting with it, I think stepping away from religion is something that is an option that many people are doing. The data and statistics would say that. So I I think that stepping away from religion can be useful for people, especially those who are really challenged by it, conflicted by it. But I think religion is working for a lot of people, and if it's working for them in a way that is healthy, get life.
Yeah. Another question I have for you is, if you're no longer a Christian, right? And as you and I have talked about, and many journalists have been discussing for years now, how much that industry has changed and is continuing to change. That if you're no longer a Christian and you are not operating in the world of journalism in the way that maybe you once thought you would be, or just the state of affairs, right, has changed how you're able to operate as a journalist. Who is Jared Hill then?
Hmm. Um, hmm. I I do still operate as a journalist. I will say that I kind of think of it right now as once a journalist, always a journalist, for myself, at least in the way that like I approach my work and think about integrity and the ways in which journalism requires us to have some rigor to the work that we're doing and the things that we're saying and the things that we're putting out to the world. So I still um, see myself as a journalist in those ways. I am letting go of a lot, or I have let go of a lot of the rigidity around the ways in which we have to show up to be useful or effective. I'm letting go. I have let go of. I let go years ago of the idea of objectivity, and those different things. So I still see myself as a journalist. From a title perspective, I call myself a journalist and multidisciplinary artist. But from like a who is Jarrett Hill standpoint, I'm in a place now of like really reevaluating all of that and figuring out what the answer to that question is um, in this new era of my life. And so I think of myself as a creative. I think of myself as a seeker. I think of myself as someone who is oriented toward love and kindness and compassion, and wanting to use my life as an example of possibility and creativity.
It's beautiful. I'm also curious for folks who are sort of arriving at a similar place, whether through divinity school, just their relationship to church in general. Um, for folks who are arriving at this particular juncture, that can be disruptive to certain relationships. I'm thinking, namely, family, right? Have you already started to sort of feel a shift in how you engage with family because of how you think they will be towards you or based on what you've actually experienced?
So what's interesting is I haven't had a ton of conversation with my family about this, which I think is part of why I was a little anxious to just put it out like I did on social media. But I also think that my family has known how challenging my experience has been with church over the years, with church and maybe to some degree Christianity, because I want to be clear that those things are not the same thing, right? Church and Christianity. But having left both, I think my parents, my family more broadly, um, they haven't asked me like a whole bunch of questions, but I know that folks have known that this has been something that's been important to me, and I think going to divinity school kind of highlights that in a particular kind of way. Um, and also, like if I'm thinking about my nuclear family, like I have always been the person that was had a very different lens on stuff, and was I was the gay one, I was the one that wasn't doing the stuff that other folks were doing, et cetera. And so I don't think my family is surprised by this, but my family's still very Christian, very in church, very much believer. So it's going to be interesting.
Do you think you'll ever go back to church?
I think there's a world where I'm in a church again, for someone's wedding, or my mom asked me to come for Mother's Day and she, have on whatever, like I think there's a world where I am in a church again, sure. I don't know that I'll be back in church per se. Certainly, this version of Jarrett is not really interested, and is also um, like triggered by church in ways that I didn't expect either. By church folks, by gospel music in a way that is really kind of difficult for me now, because I loved it so much, and now I find myself challenged by it in so many different ways. Um, yeah, I spent so many of the last few years in church parsing through everything that was being said and being like, I don't believe that, or what does that mean, or why would you say that? I get that, but what is that? And now I have that with gospel music, with everything that's coming out of church. So I have a difficult time with the idea of being back in church anytime soon.
Yeah. You bring up another interesting point. I think that someone could come across this interview and perhaps reduce it to, "Oh, he's just another church kid with church hurt." He'll get over it or he'll find his way back. What would you say in response to that?
Church hurt has definitely been part of it, right? Having really frustrating, upsetting experiences with pastors, with congregations, with organizations, etc., groups within church. Church hurt has definitely been part of it, but the church hurt, I think, has been part of me asking more questions and wanting to interrogate things more. But church hurt isn't the reason that I left Christianity. Church hurt is probably why I've left multiple churches, right? But church hurt isn't the reason that I'm not Christian anymore. I don't believe the same things anymore after getting to ask some questions and work through some things. And I think that a lot of the things that we experience in church and Christianity, when you ask a second follow-up question, oftentimes it's, well, that's just what the Bible says. And it's like, that's not enough for me. Like that might work for plenty of people. And if it does, great. But it doesn't work for me. And that's much more than church hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that we've spent so much of our time talking about specifically divinity school and your journey to no longer identifying as a Christian, but you have some really exciting things going on in your world outside of this one particular chapter. Can you talk a little bit about some of the creative projects that are underway right now?
Yeah. So the art exploration that I started in divinity school has continued, and like I've been doing a lot more painting and creating. And as you know, I've been like, well, I took sabbatical after divinity school, and I got to be in London for 6 weeks and in Portugal for 2 months. And I was still kind of working, but also like just trying to not be so focused on the things that I've been focused on. And a lot of really cool creative came out of that. And I ended up having dreams about greeting cards that have really kind of developed into a greeting card, a line of greeting cards that we're developing for historically Black phrases, which is obviously the book that came out in 2023. Doing greeting cards and other kinds of merchandising that we're developing around that. But also with the art that I've been doing, working on developing how to turn some of that into wallpaper or calendars or washi tape for the scrapbooking girls or all kinds of different things like that. And ideally, um, we will be able to kind of see that come out and people be able to engage with it. Um, I mentioned that I did my first event here in LA called Say Less, which was an abstraction what event that I called a paint plus sip and story, where I was really kind of getting to talk about like how I got here, why I'm doing this now, but also really wanted other folks to have the experience of like, see what comes out of this, right? It was a paint and sip that I told people, like, if you've ever been to a paint and sip event, this is not going to be that. So, like, don't come in with that expectation. And so the intention with that event has been say less, say more. Excuse me. The intention with that has been say less, say something, say more as a series of events where we can do abstract art, more representative art that might be in protest or in resistance or speaking up about something or really speaking to yourself or into yourself. And then say more is a community service kind of thing that I'm envisioning for the way that that grows. So those things have been happening. I'm working out various other things that I want to do, but it's an interesting time right now. So we'll see what else comes.
So I'm very curious, when you start talking about God and religion, like that can be a turn on, that could be a turn off, depending on who you're talking to at the time. So I'm very curious in terms of what does dating now look like for you to boldly go out into the world and say, I used to be a Christian?
Um, dating has been dating over the last 2 years has actually been challenging because I have been like moving so much. I got accepted in March of 2024, which meant that I was going to be leaving LA in June and then be in Boston in August and be there until May and then be on about et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So dating has already been challenging. I feel like the way that this has kind of shown up in my dating and sex life. Like I've always been a non-monogamous. Well, I've been non-monogamous for many years now. I don't know that I'm poly. I don't know if I have the bandwidth for that, but maybe. Um, but I know that I feel a lot more freedom to be myself and show up in the ways that I want to since having left Christianity. I don't have like the I had already gotten rid of a lot of the purity culture stuff that I had. And I think leaving Christianity just kind of like broke that, any of it that was left. And like, I feel a lot more sexually free. I feel like I'm having a good time, but I'm also like figuring out like, if I don't have the purity culture kind of perspective that I haven't had for a while of the church, what is the way that I think about sex now? Right? What is the way that I think about what is right for me, what's not right for me, what I'll allow, what I won't allow, what I'll try and what I won't try, etc. And I know that I had been having that conversation with myself for years. I remember being 36, 37, 38, and saying to myself, like, the church doesn't have anything to say to me about sex as a black, gay, 30 something man who is sexually active and single, the church is not saying anything to me about sex because it is wait till you find a wife and have sex with her. And then don't enjoy it too much, don't have too much fun with it, don't do it too much, and don't ever talk about it. I'm like, what is the message? Right? Like what is the thing that we're telling people to do? And so I haven't felt like the church, Christianity, etc., the way that it shows up right now, had anything to say to me about sex or sexuality or even love, dating, relationship, other than a man needs to find a wife and get married. And like that doesn't speak to me. It doesn't resonate with me. I've been non-monogamous now for years for various different reasons that are in part about religion, but a part of it is about politics. A part of it is like our social culture. Like there's various pieces of that to me. It's not just about religion, but the ways that I think about love, sex, relationships, a lot of it came from religion and Christianity, but is not rooted in that anymore for sure.
Is it hard for you to fathom your person being a Christian?
Hmm. For a long time, it was hard for me to imagine dating an atheist. I was like, oh, I would never. And now I still am a little anxious if someone is an atheist because I still believe in God. The idea of my partner being a Christian is challenging for me. It's not deal breaking. Um, it's not deal breaking, but I know we'd be having a lot of conversations about it probably.
Yeah.
Oh, could I date a Christian? Yeah, I.
For those who don't
Oh,
know you as intimately as I know you, you are one of the most empathetic, compassionate people I know. I could see you dating a Christian and not bringing shame to them and making them feel like they're a horrible person for, not believing the way that you do. So I want to make that clear to folks listening, but I also empathize with the fact that that could be difficult.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm not sure exactly how I would approach that. Yeah, I feel like the way that I've shown up in the world has, um, well, number one, thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. I feel like, as I have said to you over the years and to other friends, like I really attract a monogamous nigga. Like I, the bros that I have dated over the years have loved to be monogamous Christian, whatever's, and I'm like, that's wonderful for you. I think you should have it. I'm not
Mm,
interested. And so I don't know the answer to that question.
yeah. Awesome. Well, I'm sure just like everyone else, I'm excited to see how things continue to unfold for you and be just a viewer to all of the amazing things happening in your life.
Thank you. And a contributor. Like I said, you've been on stage a few times at this show. So
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
thank you, Corey. I appreciate you and your questions and me having to think about some of these things, either in this interview, but also just from knowing you and your own questioning and your own the ways that you present in space. So thank you.
Beautiful.
Hey, what's up? I'm Jarrett, and you just finished watching a clip from The Jarrett Hill Show. The Jarrett Hill Show, me being Jarrett Hill. And I would love it if you would like, subscribe, share with your friends, talk to someone about what you saw, and we'll see you next time.